Welcome to Meeting Our Needs, the show about people and organizations that are meeting needs in our community. Today's episode focuses on the need for independence. We'll be learning about 3 organizations that address this need in very different ways. I'm here with Mary Beth Stewart, with Together We Bake, Donna Walker of Senior Services of Alexandria, and Sheila Berry of Living Vicky. Welcome to the show, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks. Thank you.
I'd like to start off with the question, what does your organization do to help people to be independent in our community? Okay. And I'd like to start with you.
Well, Together We Bake is a job readiness program, personal development program designed for women in need of a second chance. We work with women that have been coming out of the correction facilities, recently homeless, or facing long-term unemployment. We work with them for 8 weeks where they get to actively participate and learn food safety, food production, delivery, customer service, and administration.
So Mary Beth, you're working with some folks who are really in a difficult time, possibly coming out of incarceration.
Yeah, all for nonviolent crimes, and many of the women are mothers and less than a high school education. Sure. So we try to teach them job skills so they can be employable and make better choices.
And I'm sure that it must be necessary because it's hard to get a job after something like that.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Donna, can you tell us about how Alexandria Senior Services helps people to be independent?
Sure. I'm with Senior Services of Alexandria, and we're a nonprofit in the city, and we serve seniors for different programs, either 55 years old or 60 years old and older. Many of our seniors are homebound or could be homebound, both for physical reasons but also for lack of socialization. So 2 of the main programs we do are Meals on Wheels, which is a national program, but we have volunteers every day of the year, holidays, weekends, weekdays, taking food to people who are at home. So that allows them some measure of independence because they can stay in their homes longer and they can get nutritious meals and not have to go in the hospital, and sometimes not even need a caregiver because somebody's bringing them food. But most of those folks are homebound or temporarily at home due to medical issues. And then the other thing we do now is a friendly visitor program where we have a visitor go once a week consistently every week for over an hour and spend time with the senior and really help them stay mentally aware and socially engaged. And we also do a speaker series where we really do get people out of their home to come monthly to different topics of interest to seniors, their family members, and caregivers. And we get over 100 people every time for these free public forums.
Okay, great. So you're meeting some basic needs for seniors who aren't able to get out, and you're also providing opportunities for seniors to get out and be in the community on their own, but also with support.
Yeah.
Great. And Living Vicky, what do you all do that helps people to be independent in our community?
Living Vicky helps young women develop critical thinking skills. We actually call it critical thinking independence, so this is a good tie-in for us. We use the Socratic method of, okay, why do you believe what you believe? And let's talk a little bit about that. We never give them the answer. We always help these young women determine what the best answer is for them. Generally speaking, around their careers, whether they should start their own business, whether they should stick with the industry that they're in right now. So that's the kind of independence that we hope to grow with these women.
Wow, so what are the age ranges that you work with Living Vicky?
So every month we have all age ranges. We may have an entrepreneur event. The most recent one had 70 women, and we had representation from all 4 generations. We had organic farmers, and we had wannabe organic farmers. We had young law students who wanted to learn about starting their own practices as opposed to going to a big practice. In the summer, we're kicking off a pilot program for young ladies 18, 19, and 20. We find that most youth programs stop when you turn 18, and we think you're really vulnerable then, you know. How do you get that, you know, structure that you had when you were in school or with your parents now that you're an adult? So we want to continue the programs past 18.
Yeah, that's a huge transition time for independence because, you know, your whole childhood, you're gradually becoming more and more independent. But then when you hit 18, it's really up to you to make 90% of the decisions that are made for your life all of a sudden. And you're no longer living with your parents in many situations. So.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we think that by using travel as an incentive to go through our program, we're basically killing two birds with one stone. One, we're getting them to stick with the program, and the other, it's another kind of independence, which is seeing the world and seeing how it works in other places.
Right, it's one thing to be independent here, but independent while you're traveling overseas is a whole different thing entirely.
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to getting back to talking more about the travel program.
Great.
I also just wanted to ask about some of the challenges that you all face with trying to help people be independent. And in your situation, you're working, Mary Beth, with folks who are in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, they are, and they don't believe in themselves. They don't feel like they're worth anything. So we teach them a National Restaurant Association food safety program, ServSafe certification. So they have the opportunity to have a certificate and a knowledge to get a job in food service.
And that's wonderful. And that would help them be independent.
Yes, definitely.
How do you break down those barriers that are such as they don't believe in themselves? Because that's a barrier to independence right there. Even if you have the training, that's a pretty huge barrier to independence.
Right. Well, we do empowerment groups based on a book called Houses of Healing, which talks about your inner self, inner child, and how we've gotten to where we are. When we talk about triggers and why they've made the decisions they've made, and we just try to get them to think about themselves differently. We work on communication, about what they do with their anger, communication styles, what's a better way. We try to teach them hands-on for 8 weeks. They get to practice in a work setting with Together We Bake on how to act in a work situation.
Wow. So it sounds like there's some trying to figure out what got them into the trouble and trying to maybe address some of those underlying issues.
Right.
There's also some just teaching behavioral changes.
Right.
That this is, if you act this way, it will work.
Yeah, interpersonal communications, working within a team. Right. That's exactly what we do.
We were chatting earlier. We think there's a lot of mission alignment.
Yeah.
I would love to be able to work with women who are in that decision-making process and have a past history. Maybe there's some pattern analysis that we could share with them about those decision-making processes. That would be exciting.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Yeah. Have you had any struggles with, and you're working with seniors, and you're not just working with seniors who are homebound, so you're working with seniors who are also getting out in the community and doing their thing.
Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, there's such a variety because there's the vast majority of people we serve probably do not think of themselves as seniors. You might have a few 95-year-olds who are like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm a senior.
So that's the cutoff, 95.
Yeah, the vast majority, even some of them don't want to be around those old people. So, most of us are, even who are near that age, don't think of ourselves as seniors. People don't want to have, I think you were talking a little bit about labeling of generations. They don't want to think of themselves as seniors. So some of the things we do are, health and wellness, nutrition, exercise programs, things where you really do get very active seniors out and you kind of break some of those stereotypes. And some of our events, as I was saying, you get people who might have been homebound, so they are arriving in there with their walkers or in their wheelchairs or with their caregivers, but they're getting out and doing things. And then another thing you were saying, it's a twist on independence. It's actually being willing to hear. We have every year a senior law day where we have lawyers and financial advisors come in and talk about things you need to do to, in some ways you're giving up your independence because you need to have a will and you need to have your medical directive and your power of attorney, and it guarantees your independence longer, but if something happens, then you need to, have planned ahead. And I think most seniors think, oh, yes, I've lived so much of my life and I've done so much organization, I know what I'm doing, but we don't want to do some of those things. We don't want to sort of confess that we're getting older and we need to worry about those responsibilities.
So it's kind of interesting because it seems like part of your work with independence is to help people recognize the limits of their independence.
Yeah, the potential limits, the fact that there could be limits, while still helping people be as independent as they can be.
Right, right. And whereas it might be appropriate for someone to be helping them to make sure that they remember their medications, or it might be appropriate gradually to make sure that they have a way to get around, or maybe they don't drive at night. I don't know,
Right.
And these are hard switches for people to make.
And I think the alternative is a further lack of independence if they don't take care of themselves, or if they get in a car accident, or they don't have someone come and help cook, then their independence will be taken away. They'll be, put somewhere, encouraged to live somewhere that's not even just assisted living, it's even more intensive. So it's helping them stay as independent as possible.
Right. And I bet also, on the other hand, when you have the ones that used to be homebound and are coming out from that, when they see other people their age who are out and about and doing things, does that have an effect on their motivation to take care of themselves and keep it going?
Oh, absolutely. We have the cases where the friendly visitors who are visiting their seniors, the seniors make goals with their visitors, and there's been a couple seniors who one wanted to get into assisted living from a more of a nursing home type situation, but he had to be able to walk. And he had just sort of given up and was laying in bed. And over time, he was able to get up and use his walker and walk up and down the halls with his visitor and chat and get outside. So it's gradual. And then he was able to qualify
physical challenges.
Physical challenges too, but a lot of it was mental. I think it's not that he went from
Yeah.
paraplegic to being able to walk, but it was sort of,
He made
okay,
up
I
his
can get
mind to
up,
do
I can do
this,
this. And it was because of the motivation of getting into an assisted living facility that required you to be mobile.
And it seems like we all know that the mind is connected to the body, so addressing all these issues of independence, whether they seem physical or whether they seem mental, requires treating the whole person. I'm interested to hear more about the Living Vicky travel program and how that is related to independence and how that works. Like, how does that play in? Travel's a big part of Living Vicky. I'd like to understand that better.
It is. It is. So we call our curriculum a journey, and all of the mentors are called journey guides, and the participants are called travelers, because it's not a race. It's not a box to be checked. It's ongoing learning. So we do consider this whole learning experience to be the journey, and that ties in with incentivizing behavior. We have found really does work. I'll give a personal example. I have lots of nieces and nephews. We roll out the rule of 5. It's just a personal story. No pregnancy given or received, no funky tattoos or piercings, no drugs or alcohol. You have to finish high school and you have to enroll in some kind of higher education. Doesn't have to be college. It could be VOTEC, or I have a niece that was considering Culinary Institute Arts. If you and a friend keep the 5, you get a trip anywhere in the U.S. And the friend is a good support group, right? And if you finish the higher education, you get a trip anywhere in the world. I hope to go hiking in New Zealand with my niece when she finishes college next year, the Queen Charlotte track. So it's a way of incentivizing behavior and getting people to get outside of thinking, oh, well, I just live here and I only know these things and I only know these people. And when you put in front of them, like at the time my nephew Jordan was 11, he wants to go to Antarctica and see the penguins. He has changed, hopefully will continue to change some of his behavior, because he sees his future as, I'm actually going to be able to go to Antarctica and see penguins in person. So if you take that to another degree with incentivizing behavior for women who you say don't have faith in themselves, or young women who can't see what their future looks like, that by offering a tangible goal, you get forward movement.
Wonderful. Yeah. So that brings me to personal stories, because as you guys have all been bringing up specific things, like the man in the walker and the 2 young people that are in your life. Can you think of a story that is a very specific story of a specific person that really benefited from what your organization does? Something that maybe pops out in your head that you're like, wow, this is a success story, I want to share this.
I have 1 or 2. Yeah,
right, Mary Beth.
from our inaugural graduating team, with her Serve Safe certificate in hand, she applied for a job at an artisan sandwich shop in the area and was hired, and within 3 months she was promoted to catering manager, and she's still doing that now a year and 3 months later.
Wow.
And another graduate, Together We Bake, has hired as program assistant, and she's immediately relatable with the population we work with. So she's been co-leading the empowerment groups, and she's a superstar and a great help to the TWB staff. So,
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine that hearing from somebody who's been through what
right.
they've been through would really help people who are coming out of incarceration.
Yeah.
Be like, no, you're not just someone who's never experienced what I felt. You've been there.
Right. A lot of the women are in recovery too from addiction, and so that's a whole nother part that I can't relate to, but she can. You know,
That's
so it's really great.
Yeah, it's great to find these people who are ambassadors and can really link people who want to help with, without seeming like they're preaching down to them because they've been in that situation.
But our long-term goal is to have a training kitchen and a production kitchen, and it's going to be staffed by our graduates. So that's what we see.
That's nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, you're one on the way. Right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's great
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And
So-
Donna with Senior Services of Alexandria.
So I was thinking, that Senior Services has been around decades, and a lot of what we've done, we actually run a call center to help disabled people get transportation, seniors and folks with disabilities. We do the Meals on Wheels, which is each team of volunteers delivers meals each day, but it's very fast, so you don't get to really meet the people. You know them a little bit. It's a nice social interaction, but you don't really get their stories. And then the speaker series, it's monthly. A lot of people come, they gather, you talk to them a little bit. So I keep dwelling on our Friendly Visitor program, which was sort of our answer to getting those stories and learning more about the individuals. But I'm realizing it sounds, I keep using that as an example. It sounds like it's the only thing we do, but it's the way that we loop back and again get to meet these same people who use all the different services
Right.
we have. But this is where there's this in-depth interaction. So when we can make those connections, the manager of that program interviews the volunteers and interviews the seniors, and they match them up. So my story is a senior who, you want to make the match last, and last for a year every week, but hopefully for multiple years, and to be win-win for both people. So one of our most recent senior matches was very, very negative. She just complained about absolutely everything. And so it's hard to make a match because you don't want to send a nice, eager volunteer in to deal with this really negative person.
So this is your success story?
Yes, this is leading somewhere because after a couple weeks, there was a risk taken. The match was made. After a couple weeks, the volunteer calls and says, it was just a mask. She's not really negative. She's wonderful. She's got a lot to say. She's got a lot to teach me. She was just sad and lonely.
Huh. So the volunteer stuck with it.
Stuck
through all
with it
that.
and then kind of got through that, and the senior is certainly much happier and probably healthier, and other things will come from this.
That's an amazing
That's my story.
Yeah. Breaking through those outside barriers that apparently that person held up for a few weeks.
Yeah, and kept a lot of people away and out
We
of her
call
life.
that the lampshade and the light bulb. We all have a lampshade that hides, and sometimes it's a negative lampshade. So
Hides our
Well,
light.
that's a good
Yeah.
analogy.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, and Sheila with Living Vicky.
So each month we have a different theme. And we had started out with constructive conversations, and it ties to a little bit about what you were saying about how do you make decisions under grace, how do you make them under pressure. It's very easy to make a good decision, when nobody's pushing you and there are no challenges, no crises, and you have enough money for bills. How do you make those same good decisions when you're under pressure?
That's a good point.
Yeah, we talked a lot about turning off the lizard brain, the difference between the amygdala and the frontal cortex, and how you have to give your body and your mind time to adjust to whatever the crisis is to make the right decision. And this one young lady had come to the class, and she had lots of fear issues about constructive conversation. She found them confrontational, and during most of our role playing, she would talk a little bit about a challenging relationship with her boss. The next month we had Managing Up for Millennials, Building a Better Relationship with Your Boss. She came back and she's like, okay, I want to put all of these things into effect that I learned during constructive conversations and about being brave and being empirical about what I want to get out of a conversation and not emotional. And we went through the building the relationship with the boss. Called me the next day, totally in tears. So I thought it went horribly, and it actually had gone great. She had the first meaningful relationship in 4 years that she had ever had with her boss, and they agreed to meet in a safe environment, no blaming, leaving the other person room and safety to share whatever was going on. And so that was about 4 months ago. She's just gotten a huge raise.
Wow.
They were misunderstanding each other the whole time. So I want to help a lot of women like that.
Right.
That's amazing.
Great story.
I know a lot of men who'd like to be helped like that too. Oh, that's fabulous. That does bring me to a question. I know that both of your organizations work exclusively with women. Is that, am I right?
Yes.
Are there special challenges that come, and also many seniors are, I guess, just statistically, there's more females who get to that age. And I'm curious if you've noticed any challenges that are specific to helping women with independence.
Good question. The women don't have a lot of services. That's why we picked just women. We've talked about men and women.
So, like, there's more services for formerly incarcerated men than there are for formerly incarcerated women.
Especially the women are mothers, so that adds a whole dimension that
Great.
it's just different for a
It
woman.
is. Yeah, you're talking about independence, and also you need to be caring.
Right.
And of course, there are single fathers out there as well, but it's not as common.
Right.
And you're filling that need that's not being met for formerly incarcerated women.
Yeah, we're trying.
Great. How about you with Living Vicky?
So we found that all of our research was pointing to women not having the collaborative environment where women tend to succeed. We're very lucky. One of the women on our volunteer staff, Dr. Dilshad, wrote an entire thesis paper, which was later bound into a book, about how much more successful women are when they work together in groups and in teams, and the entire team moves forward, which is also a great, opportunity for the Socratic method of, getting towards a positive outcome with the entire group, not just one person being successful, but everybody on the team being successful. And we found that, I was mentioning earlier, that if you have a mentor, you're 53% more likely to get a manager or higher level position. So mentoring is back to being collaborative, and how do you make those relationships? If you're a young lady that's, looking for restoration after, being an offender, it's going to be very hard, you would think, to find a mentor because the system is overworked for people that are paid for doing it. So how do we create a matchmaking, business of these mentors, and how do we care for the people who live and work in our communities by providing that service? That's why we chose to focus on women.
Great, yeah. And it strikes me, as you say, working together as a team to move forward. That's certainly something that I'm learning as I work in this field of videography, because you'll notice all around we have a huge team of camera people, and there's a whole bunch of folks in the control room. None of this would happen without them. And at AIM, nothing gets done. No videos get made that are worth watching, unless there's a team of people working together to make them. So I think it might be something that we all have to learn, in terms of working as a team, and it may be something some might argue that women naturally do well in that environment. My guess is that perhaps everybody would do better to work together.
That's why we called it Together We Bake. There you go. We wouldn't have cookies or granola because we make them together. Yeah.
Yeah, and they are good. I have had the cookies.
They are really good.
And granola from Together We Bake.
Yeah.
And it is very memorable.
Yeah.
I remember I actually was working with a group that made a video about Together We Bake.
Right.
And I remember one of the women sent the cookies home, and her son said, "You didn't make these. No, these are too good." But she did. So I've also been struck just, well, before we close, I want to hear from each of you, because you seem passionate about what you do. And I'd like to hear how you discovered that this was your calling for this time in your life, you know.
Well, the co-founders, Stephanie Wright and Tricia Sabatini, contacted me and asked me to volunteer for the inaugural group. And long story short, I participated, fell in love with the team members and the mission, and I got my ServSafe certification along with the first group of women, and now they can't get rid of me because I just love it.
With youth. So going to an organization that works with seniors is different. But I think based on this conversation, it's really true that it's because of mentors and collaboration and becoming a nonprofit director. It's an overwhelmingly female profession. And other women in Alexandria reached out to me, and somebody brought me to, the former director brought me to this organization. The current director's keeping me there, and we all work very collaboratively as a team, and that's what brought me there, not the field necessarily.
Right, that partnership that you had with this person who you trusted.
Yeah, exactly.
Wonderful.
Very cool. I actually, you know how some people say they have one big light bulb and it's like, oh, I must do this thing, or it dawns on you, an epiphany moment. I had a series of them, kind of like Christmas tree lights. They were small twinkly lights. First, I had read a quote on social media about how our youth are terrible, they're entitled, they love luxury, they're disrespectful, they don't want to work hard. And then it's ... Socrates, 5th century BC. I'm like, oh, well, nothing's changed. The next day I saw the Time magazine cover, the me generation, making fun of millennials. And it really bothered me that an entire generation was being painted with this big, broad, negative brush stroke. Hence the name Living Vicky, all the best characteristics of the millennials: vision, integrity, caring, knowledge, and youthful energy. And then I was back on social media because I have lots of millennial characteristics, and I follow Lily Tomlin. I think she's brilliant, she's very funny, she's very articulate, and she's known for her quote saying, I wish somebody would do something about that. And one day I woke up and I realized I am somebody. It's like, okay, I hear you, universe. And hence Living Vicky was born.
Wonderful. Wow.
Thanks.
Well,
Great.
thank you all for
Thank
being
you.
here and for being involved or founding these wonderful organizations. And it's time for me to sign off, but I really appreciate your being here.
Thank you.
So at home, this is Nathan Bynum, and thank you all for watching this episode of Meeting Our Needs. Please check out the websites for Together We Bake, Senior Citizens of Alexandria, and Living Vicky. See how you can get involved and meet your need for community and contribution. Thank you for watching.